Hello students. Today we'll start the class with the explanation of the very famous poem by Roald Dahl, that is Television. This is one of the poems of class 9 ICSE syllabus, and I'm sure those of you who are sitting for the ICSE exams this year will find this explanation very helpful. So without wasting much time, I would jump straight into the introduction. So, this poem describes in a very outrageous detail the dangers of television and what a parent can do to save their child. The poet's use of hyperbolic statements to reflect on the dangers of watching too much TV shows how much he is concerned about this device. They range from a child's brain melting to the child's loss, the desire to understand the world. So he wants to spread the message from the very beginning that television is not at all a very good solution to keep a child amused. There can be many other ways by which a child can be kept happy, busy, engaged, and at the same time, he or she will go on learning some good things. So we all, by the end of this poem, we all will kind of agree to the thought that television is not the only source of amusement for a child. Okay, so the first stanza. The most important thing we have learned, so far as children are concerned, is never let them near your television set. Or better still, just don't install the idiotic thing at all. In almost every house we have been, we have watched them gaping at the screen. They loll and slop and lounge about and stare until their eyes pop out. Last week in someone's place we saw a dozen eyeballs on the floor. They sit and stare and stare and sit until they are hypnotized by it, until they are absolutely drunk with all that shocking, ghastly junk. So, the very first 16 lines, this poem has not been categorized into stanzas. It's a complete continuous narration. So if I divide into a couple of lines and explain, I would like to say that the poet advises us from his experience that people should never allow their children to go near the television. It will be even better to not install the idiotic thing called television. But why is television an idiotic thing, according to the poet? Throughout the entire poem, the poet attempts to answer this. I'll read again from the mid of this section. In almost every house we have been, we have watched them gaping at the at the screen. They loll and slop and lounge about and stare until their eyes pop out. Last week in someone's place we saw a dozen eyeballs on the floor. So here the poet is sharing his experience. In almost every house he has visited, he has observed children gaping at the screen. They were staring with their eyes wide open and with absolute concentration of mind. So actually, I have written all the notes in a notebook so that I can refer to them while am explaining to you. And I would also request all of you to have your textbook open in front of you and take some personal notes in your own notebook as well, so that when you sit down to understand or to go through this poem, you have an extra source of notes from my channel. And you can if you are really finding this explanation helpful, then just subscribe my channel and hit the bell icon so that whenever I'm uploading a class, you will get an instant notification. Because subscribing is not at all costly. It is completely free, and the only way it helps each other is that I get a chance to grow my channel and you get a chance to stay connected with me through my classes. Okay, so here for sitting a long time before the television set, the children become tired. They sit or lie in a lazy and casual manner, slop and loll and slop and lounge about and get sloppy. So they keep staring at the television until their eyes are too tired to watch anymore. Their eyes pop out. These are not just the poet's imagination. He in reality saw a dozen eyeballs, that is, half a dozen children, sitting on the floor at someone's house very recently, say last week. So I'll read out the end section. They sit and stare and sit until they are hypnotized by it, until they are absolutely drunk with all that shocking, ghastly junk. So when children are in front of a television set, they sit and stare and sit for a long, sit for, unlimited hours. So they don't seem to be moving, they don't seem to be thinking anything. They probably just forget everything around them, they forget everything about the world around them, and they go to a fancy world. Isn't it? I think all of you can relate to these words. So rather, the one they watch on the television becomes real. The things they watch, the videos or whatever, that world is a kind of real to them. So they are almost completely hypnotized by the idiotic box that is the television set, and they are absolutely drunk. Their minds are filled with the shocking, ghastly junk, and they think that all of those things are true. And and but they forget to realize that most of those things are, inappropriate for their age. So those TV shows kill their valuable time and make them lazy, with no room for their physical play and exercise. They don't have any scope of spending time with books and with their loved ones and with nature and interacting with each other, their friends. So their minds are filled with the images and stories of a virtual world compared to a drunk man's imagination, an imaginary world. So they get lost into a completely imaginative set of thoughts which they cannot restore. Okay, so the next. Oh, yes, we know. It keeps them still. They don't climb out the windowsill. They never fight or kick or punch. They leave you free um, to cook the lunch and wash the dishes in the sink. So the poet here says that he knows that television helps in keeping the naughty children at peace and calm. So sometimes parents choose television as the only resort to keep their children engaged. But in reality, television is just like an idiot box which occupies their brain, their mind in such a way that those little kids or those growing kids, they forget to think about the real world. So when they are in front of a TV set, they no more do mischievous things like climbing out the windowsill, fighting, kicking, and punching. So students, I will again remind you that if possible, please do not forget to open the textbook in front of you and do keep writing notes while I'm explaining the poem to you. So they do mischievous things like climbing out the windowsill, fighting, kicking, and punching. They let the mother free to cook the lunch and wash the dishes in the sink without any disturbance. But that cannot be an excuse to let them sit before a TV. Because, according to the poet, this idiotic device does no more harm than good. So it is always the poet tries to express his notion that this device is only and only harmful and it does no good to anyone. The next section, But did you ever stop to think to I'll just read few lines at a time so that it is easier for you to take down the notes while I'm explaining? But did you ever stop to think, to wonder just exactly what this does to your beloved Dot? It rots the sense in the head. It kills imagination dead. So here the poet asks the parents whether they ever spent a moment to think exactly what harm this television does to their loving child. He answers it in a brilliant way himself. Watching television regularly damages the senses in the brain. Children tend to get drawn away from reality, the real world around him. He or she tends to believe what he watches without considering reality. His own environment hardly matches with the ones he sees on screen, but still he thinks all that are real and applicable to him. The power of imagination is also spoiled in the mind of a child. Children start living in a preset imaginary world that they see on the screen. They slowly lose their own creative thinking and imagination power. Maybe whatever TV shows display are mostly fictional, that is, close imitation of the real world, not a completely different world as in a fairy tale. So, students, I have prepared my own notes in a big notebook and I'm trying to read those out while I'm explaining this poem to you. So it's a request to all of you that please do not forget to take notes for yourself when you hear to this explanatory video. But I'm sure it will help you prepare for your exams better. Okay, let's continue. So, TV shows display are mostly fictional, that is, close imitation of the real world, not a completely different world as in a fairy tale. The poet continues to argue on how television sets affect a child's mind. Children watch different shows on different channels, and there are contradictory ideas also sometimes. These things clog the mind, creating a clutter and messes up the organized ideas and thoughts. So, as the poet says, it clogs and clutters up the mind. It makes a child so dull and blind. So, moreover, the child forgets to think on his or her own. His entire mind is full of the images he has seen on the TV. His or her important time is wasted in fictional thoughts and not related to his or her own life. His or her study and thoughts on how to improve his or her skills and personality are neglected. So, this is as if the child gradually becomes dull and blind. So, he can no longer understand a fantasy, a fairyland. So, the poet feels that due to the imposed limitation on thoughts, the children no longer understand a fantasy or a fairy tale. They cannot extend their imagination power to that level. They are now used to see an image of the likely real world, a virtual reality. I'll read again. His brain becomes as soft as cheese, his powers of thinking rushed and freeze. He cannot think, he only sees. So the poet expresses that by watching television, the brain of a child becomes soft like cheese. Children now will believe everything they watch or hear on TV. They cannot find their own logic to analyze and interpret a thing. The power of thinking, the thought process freezes and gets rusty. They cannot think on their own. All they do is watching and believing what others say on TV. So they become dumb actually. The next section. All right, you will cry. I'm reading the text now. All right, you will cry. All right, you will say. But if we take the set away, what shall we do to entertain our darling children? Please explain. So now the poet says that he knows what the readers or especially the parents would ask him. The question is how parents shall entertain their appreciate their or their affectionate children if they take the TV set away from them. The poet has the answer in the next lines. We'll answer this by asking you what use the darling wants to do. How used they keep themselves contented before this monster was invented? Have you forgotten? Don't you know? The poet answers the above question only by throwing a question. What people used to do to keep themselves entertained when television was not invented? TV set is a dreaded device, a monster to him. He wants to remind people what they did in the absence of television, and he also wants them to realize that life was better when television was not invented. So this thought varies from man to man, and it depends on how you are thinking or how you are treating that object. Let's move on to the next section of text. Sorry. Yes. That's all right. Such wondrous fine, fantastic tales of dragons, gypsies, queens, and whales, and treasure isles and distant shores where smugglers rowed with muffled oars, and pirates wearing purple pants, and sailing ships and elephants, and cannibals crouching round the pot, stirring away at something hot. It smells so good. What can it be? Good gracious, it's Penelope. Okay, the poet here talks about the popular books of adventures that children used to read in his time. In those days, boys and girls read fantastic stories of dragons, gypsies, queens, whales, treasure, islands, smugglers, pirates, ships, elephants, cannibals, and so on. So these were the varieties of books that children used to read at that time. The next section of text I'm reading now for you. The younger ones had Beatrix Potter with Mr. Todd the dirty daughter, and Squirrel Nutkin, Pigling Blunt, and Mrs. Tiggy Winkle, and just how the camel got his hump, and how the monkey lost his rump. So yes, um, okay, I'll read a little bit more. Um, okay, so and Mr. Toad and bless my soul, there's Mr. Rat and Mr. Mole. Oh, books, what books they used to know, those children living long ago. Okay, so here's a complete difference of opinion, the children of today and the children of those times. So here the poet enhances his thought process all the more, and he says that younger children used to read stories written by Helen Beatrix Potter, an author of children's books featuring animals with colorful illustrations. Dahl, or the poet, here pays a tribute to the children author for her fantastic stories on animals. He also mentions some of the stories like How the Camel Got His Hump and some characters like Mr. Toad. So Mrs. Tiggy Winkle, etc., from the stories, and this shows the poet's love for those books and how he enjoyed them in his childhood days. So this is a whole lot of riches or wealth that children used to enjoy in those days and which children miss nowadays. So the poet repetitively in the entire poem from the very beginning he tries to make us realize that these are the things that the children nowadays don't get a chance to enjoy, which the children in those days got a chance to enjoy. Let's move on to the next section of text. It's a huge, I know. Okay. So please, oh please, we beg, we pray, go throw your TV set away. I'll read the first four lines now. And in its place, you can install a lovely bookshelf on the wall. So the poet here requests the parents for their own good to throw away their television set and install a bookshelf in its place. So I know it sounds weird, but yes, the poet really wants this. Okay, the next set of lines. Then fill the shelves with lots of books, ignoring all the dirty looks, the screams and yells, the bites and kicks, and children hitting you with sticks. Fear not, because we promise you that in about a week or two of having nothing else to do, they'll now begin to feel the need of having something to read. So, after installing the bookshelf in place of a TV set, the parents will face some dirty looks, screams, yells, bites, and kicks from their children. So the children will be annoyed at their parents. But the poet insists on filling that shelf with lots of books on various topics, ignoring all these screaming and all these complaining. So the poet here also assures us that after a week, those children would find nothing to do without a TV set around, and so they will finally feel the need to read books. They will come closer to books naturally. So the poet actually is requesting to incorporate this habit forcibly upon the children so that they learn something good. Let's move on to the next section of text, and hopefully this is the last section of text. It is a lengthy poem, I know, but I am trying to explain it uh, the easiest and the fastest way I can. And once they start, oh boy, you watch the slowly growing joy that fills their hearts. They'll grow so keen, they'll wonder what they had ever seen in that ridiculous machine, that nauseating, foul, and clean, repulsive television screen. Okay, I'll stop here and then I'll read on the next set of text once I finish explaining these lines. The poet is saying that once they start reading, the only way is ahead of them. They will find it interesting to read more and more books that will give them imagination and thoughts, the knowledge and wisdom, the satisfying of mind and heart. At one stage, they will grow so keen on reading books that they will wonder what they had found in that silly machine called television. They will find the television screen in disgusting and unclean, as they will discover the real joy of their life, the real joy of the world, and that is, according to the poet, reading books. So I'll continue reading the text. And later, each and every kid in that ridiculous machine, that nauseating, oh, sorry. And later, each and every kid will love you more for what you did. So this is how you know the poet finally wants to conclude the poem, that every kid will love the parents for giving them the opportunity to find real joy in reading books. Even when they would grow up, they would thank their parents for taking the television set away and for installing the bookshelf out there. So if we have to conclude the entire poem, the poet is encouraging us for reading and no other nonsense activities which yield no fruitful outcome, and he is fully sure and confident that TV can never be a substitute for books. Books are the only objects that can help us in achieving real and ultimate wisdom. So, students, I'm sure that this video will help you in understanding this long and huge poem easier. And if you are really liking my class, then please like, share, and subscribe. Uh, this is absolutely free. You just have to share with your friends, whoever would be helped with these classes. And if you subscribe my channel, I will be able to continue my classes. My channel will grow, and you will get a notification for free whenever I upload a class. So I'll come back with another video on another topic, hopefully another poetry of class 9 ICSE syllabus. And till then, stay happy. Take care.